I'm Dr. Judith, and I teach at the University of Ontario Institute of Technology just outside Toronto in Oshawa. We are a university that's just 7 years old, and I've only been there 2 years. I'll tell you a bit about that in a minute, and my area of expertise. So first of all, it's a pleasure being here this weekend. A double pleasure because my daughter lives in Vancouver. So any opportunity I have to come here, you bet I'm here to see her and to do what I need to do. So thank you so much for inviting me. So drug use, abuse, public policies, and anything under the rubric of addiction and recovery interests me greatly, specifically as it relates to gender. I've been involved in this area for the past 15 years in the community, in academia, in the Maritimes, in Toronto, in Ottawa, and last but not least, in the United States. I had a PowerPoint presentation to do today, but decided to offer instead some of my insights as a Canadian who spent 6 years teaching in the United States from 2001 to 2005, and 2007, I just arrived back here in 2007. A liberal Canadian who taught at Ohio University, and then for 4 years, and then went for 2 years at Missouri State University, the southwest corner of Missouri. Do you have any idea what type of areas those are? I didn't try that. And I was known as that liberal drug professor Canadian. And I had students in my classes, believe it or not, I had to bring in extra seats. Not only did they want to see someone who was very weird, and a Canadian's good because they all love us because they don't know anything about us anyway. And lie, as I always did, yes, we're just great, we're peacekeepers, you betcha. But I taught a drug course, which I've never been taught before in either of those universities. And I also teach a drug course at UOYT, which has only been taught, no, it has not been taught before. So I'm known as the expert on drugs. So that's what I want to talk about today. I was hired in a criminology department. I did not graduate with a crim degree, but when I went to the States, they said, what's your area of expertise? And I said, drugs. And they said, oh good, you can be in our crim department. And I said, fine by me, I'm with you all the way. So what I wanted to do is some of my insights between what I found when I was teaching in the States at two schools and also what I know about Canada. So I offer here an overview of those differences beginning with Canada. So there's much in the way of relevant stats that refer to the issues in both Canada and the US, and seeing that I'm restricted in my time, I will talk about specific ones. So first a bit about corrections in Canada regarding male and female offenders and drug use and abuse. And if I had a marker pen, I'd put these stats on the board. But I want you to remember them because I'm going to say them twice. So since the early 1970s in Canada, drug offenses have accounted for more than a third of the growth in our incarcerated population, and since 1980, the incarceration rate for drug arrest has increased 100%. 100% in Canada. Much, much better than the US going forward. We have the highest number of drug arrests per capita of any nation other than the United States, and there are currently about 1,200 inmates serving time for drug-related offenses in Canadian federal prisons, and several thousand serving time for drug-related crime in the provincial system. So incarceration rates are significant indicators in relation to substance abuse. However, one's gender also has an impact on such abuse. Now, I give a lot of presentations in the States, the American Society of Criminologists, and when I was down there for the 6 years, and a couple of weeks I'm going to Philadelphia to present at the ASC. And I often do this lecture or this comparative analysis because I want to see the look on the faces of my American cohorts when I tell them the difference in the stats. They actually don't believe me. So they come to me afterwards and said, where are your references? And I said, well, here they are. Because they're not very well educated. We are the neighbors to the north, but they know so little about us in terms of not only just drug use and abuse, harm reduction, they have no idea. My students there do not have any idea what the medical model is for harm reduction. They know just what they do in the States. So again, one's gender has an impact. And prison stats show that in 2006 in Canada, there were 909 federal women offenders either incarcerated or on conditional release. And 44% were incarcerated, 6% were on conditional release in 2006. So we had, 2001 back up a bit, we had 342 women who were incarcerated in our federal prisons who were there because of drug offenses. Remember that stat, 342. We know about the prison for women in Kingston, Ontario, which eventually evolved into 5 prison institutions across Canada as a result of Honorable Louise Arbor, as Justice on the Supreme Court, conducting an inquiry on wrongdoing in our prisons. And I'm very, when I came back to Canada 2 years ago, I constantly, when I was down in the States, I highlighted all the good things that they do. But being a critical scholar, particularly a critical criminologist, I love finding things wrong with everything. And it does not necessarily mean it's wrong, it's just you want to be critical of it, as I try to teach my students to become critical thinkers. So when I do this sort of lecture, I need to give sort of the good and the bad as well. And we had, when we originally set up these prisons for women, the original plan was for them to be caring, empowering, and supportive. And punishment would no longer be the guiding principle. But what has happened, Faith argues that the correctional practice of the CSC remain conservative and punitive. She further states that abuses continue, there are illegal searches, lack of legal counsel, inappropriate classification, segregations, and the transfer of women to men's prisons. Very similar to the US. Of course, they have a larger population and a larger input of women offenders, mostly Black African Americans. So corrections in the United States with female and male offenders, drug use and abuse. And this is where it gets really scary. Prison stats 2008 show that the number of women under the jurisdiction of state or federal prison authorities increased 1.2% from year-end 2007, reaching 115,000 plus. And the number of men rose 0.7%, totaling 1,500,000. State prisons also held an estimated 253,000+ drug offenders. But in 2000, state and federal prisons in the U.S. reports of at least 1.5 million children under age 18, or about 2% of all children in the U.S. Therein lies the big problem. The women I worked with in the States, which I did in Ohio and Missouri, told me, don't take my kids away. And that's the first thing they do when they incarcerate them. Ex-prisoners increased in numbers to up to 10 million children directly affected by the incarceration of a parent in the States. And nationally, there are now more than 8 times as many women incarcerated in both state and federal prisons and local jails as there were in 1980, increasing in number from 12,000 plus in 1980 to 182,000 plus by 2002. Between 1986 and 1999, the number of women incarcerated in state facilities for drug-related offenses increased by 888%. That's 3/8. 888%. Surpassing the rate of growth in the number of men in prison for similar crimes. When all forms of correctional supervision, probation, parole, jail, and state federal prison are considered, more than 1 million women are now behind bars or under the control of the CJ system, comprising 7% of the U.S. prison population. That's 1 million. That does not count the other 1 million that are out on parole, etc., etc. As well, the Bureau of Justice Statistics in the U.S. completed a survey in 2005 showing that among victims of abusive sexual context, women were overrepresented compared to the general inmate population. And ironically, what is considered a crime outside of prison is effectively ignored by the system or worse. 5. All right, so a bit to drug policies, and I'll be fast on this. I really want a discussion on this too. In the U.S., as you obviously all know, the criminalization mode or model of addiction and recovery is a norm. And that basically says that drug addiction is a crime, first and foremost. And these punitive attitudes have intensified over the last half-century, leading to a drastic increase in the number of women and men caught in the net of the war on drugs. And in Canada, we have the harm reduction policy, which you all know about, a policy and program that is defined as decreasing the adverse health, social, and economic consequences of drug use without requiring abstinence from drugs. I will tell you, when I give this comparative lecture in the States, my students don't like me very much. It does not bother me too much how to intimidate by like a God nowadays at my age, in my experience, worked in the community too many years. I just want them to listen, and many of them don't want to do that, which therein lies a great problem. So my argument, now many policies have been argued in relation to substance abuse and crime in the United States. And this is what some of the scholars say. Modern drug control policy is earmarked by a number of policy strategies, each designed to address a specific aspect of the nation's drug problem. None of such policies has proven to be successful in reducing drug abuse to what could be termed an acceptable level. Other authors claim the number of drug offenders.
So